Before we begin, a lot of you have asked about the footage of the Viscount and the Eclipse I used in yesterday's video. It's a part of a fully animated battle that EC Henry and I are making, which should be available in a few weeks. I'm posting information and some more scenes on Patreon periodically, so if you're interested, consider supporting me there. Anyway, roll the intro. Whenever I talk about Star Destroyers, one thing people say all the time is that the Empire should have just stuck with the Venator, the Republic-era Star Destroyer, instead of introducing the Imperial line. We'll be evaluating that claim today, and we'll start by examining the purpose of the Imperial Navy and the Star Destroyer line generally. As I explained in a recent video, the Empire was tasked with the unenviable responsibility of policing an entire galaxy, which it was subjugating through force. Unfortunately, there weren't enough starships in the galaxy to police every system. The main way they handled this was by establishing a navy which was overwhelmingly powerful. A navy which, although not capable of policing or even having a presence in every sector of the galaxy at once, could brutally shut down any party which chose to revolt. Those are the basics of the Tarkin Doctrine and Imperial rule. The destroyer served in this role well because it was very large, it was armed to the teeth, and it was almost impossible to destroy in a straight-up fight. Having thousands of this ship type power your navy makes your faction seem almost unbeatable. The question is thus, assuming we maintain the same doctrinal structure of the Empire, does the Venator fit the role of mainline capital ship better? And I mean that both on a Tarkin Doctrine level, but also when talking practically about space combat. Let's compare the two ships. The Imperial Star Destroyer was 1,600 meters long, well shielded and armed with over 100 turbo lasers and ion cannons, enough to outgun pretty much any competing ship in the galaxy. Alongside its weapons, it also carried a maximum of 6 fighter squadrons as well as the resources needed to occupy a planet. The Venator, on the other hand, was predicated on fighter carrying, with only 10 turbo lasers and a dedicated point defense system. According to lore, the trade-off for less guns was a carrying capacity of 440 starfighters. So, which of these vessels would serve the Empire best in their war against the Alliance? And of course generally to keep peace in the galaxy. I think the key issue in this analysis is whether the additional fighters carried by the Venator offer a real tactical advantage, and whether those additional fighters are worth giving up the firepower of the ISD. On that note, we'll assume that the Empire is still using TIE fighters, or else the Venator gets an unfair and really unrealistic advantage. The main argument against the switch to the Venator is the fact that, despite what several source books would have you believe, in my opinion, there is absolutely no sufficient evidence to suggest that either the Venator or the Imperial Star Destroyer carried their max complement of fighters. Certainly they didn't carry their max complement most of the time. In the Clone Wars TV show, for example, we typically see 2, maybe 3 or 4 squadrons of fighters launched from the Venator, and I think you could say the same for expanded universe material. I honestly cannot think of a single instance where anything near the supposed 40+ squadrons of fighters are used. That seems pretty ridiculous to me. The same can be said of the Imperial Star Destroyer, though I think the numbers we have for that ship are a bit more reasonable. ISDs often field about 3 squadrons. We certainly don't see them usually take 6, and I think it's pretty safe to say that there was a starfighter resource scarcity present in both the Empire and the Republic. It's a lot more forgivable in the Republic because their starfighters were such high quality, but it showed in the Empire, which relied on numbers advantages for their cheap ties to win battles. My point in saying this is that I don't think the Empire switching to a carrier hybrid necessarily saves the faction from the issues they have with fighting the Alliance. They don't magically get more TIE fighters just because they start using carriers, and I don't even know if it logically follows that they would spend more on TIE fighters at all. Even if the Empire did want to invest more in starfighters, such a change could be made within the confines of the pre-existing military framework. because again, I don't think most Imperial Star Destroyers were carrying anywhere near 72 ties. Even ignoring this, however, the second issue is that many of the Alliance's victories came not from their fighter superiority, but the success of hit-and-run attacks. More fighters does help protect against this strategy, but in the long run doesn't solve anything. Third, swapping out the ISD means that the Empire loses their ability to outgun basically every enemy ship, which is how they currently stand. Mon Calamari cruisers, for example, are better armed than a Venator. Not only does that remove some of the fear factor of the Tarkin doctrine, but it also means that the difference between the quality of Rebel and Imperial fighters would be more heavily disadvantaging the Empire, as they couldn't rely on the blunt strength of their capital ships. But even if I'm wrong and more TIE fighters would help, and they're actually more available or within spending range, I think there are better strategies. The first would be just adding more dedicated carriers to ISD groups. Now, of course, this was something the Empire did do, but a heavier focus in support ships while still maintaining the ISD as the symbolic and functional flagship of most Imperial fleets would be a good idea. Let's face it, the ISD as a frontline capital ship is fraught with issues, though few of them are related to the ship's carrying capacity, which I think is more than adequate. The more serious issue, a lack of point defense on the ISD-2, the ineffectiveness of the ship against Rebel hit-and-run tactics, and some poor design choices when it comes to weapon placement and bridge location, would either not be solved by the Venator, or would not be solved to the degree that would justify losing the ISD's firepower. Besides for better constituted fleets, I think another good option would be a Venator Imperial Star Destroyer hybrid. Take the ISD base, replace some of the bigger weapons with more point defense cannons, and then clear some internal space for more hangars. I don't think you need 400 fighters, that seems kind of ludicrous compared to the Imperial Star Destroyer's contemporaries, but if possible, shoving another couple of squadrons, perhaps with the dorsal hangar bay, would be a nice touch. You know what else would be a really good strategy? Use the Imperial Star Destroyer and Venators in joined fleets. I think they complement each other beautifully. But in the end, I don't think the Empire should have used Venators as their main capital ships. The Imperial Star Destroyer, while not perfect, I think was a better choice overall, especially when paired with good support. That, however, is just my opinion. I would love to hear what you guys think. Take a second and vote in the poll. Which frontline capital ship would you base your navy off? The Venator or the ISD? Of course, assuming you're running the Empire. Vote, and also let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Till next time, guys, this has been EckhartsLadder. May the Force be with you.